Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web novel All is Fair in War, taken from Reddit with the author's approval. If you are new to the story, there is a playlist listed in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Admiral Harvey stood still and took in all the data he could from the interface, the moment seemingly stretching out into eternity. His mind worked overtime, trying to come up with ways that he could reverse the colossal fuck-up of his subordinates. It had only been 2 seconds since he had shouted out the last order, yet the ship's shields were already up, which slightly lessened his anger. Well, if the crews aren't smart, at the very least they're quick. Even so, can't really blame them. This is the natural result of barging in with barely any information. He took another deep breath and prepared himself to issue another command, well aware that the upcoming fight would be the riskiest he'd fought in a long while, if ever. 2 battle stations! I want you to launch all of the mines that we have available! But sir, are you sure you want to launch all of them? Shouldn't we save some for later? An officer asked meekly, much to the Admiral's great confusion. Questioning orders in the middle of battle? What have we come to? Where the average soldier lacks basic competence. General Hurst was right to be nervous. We're clearly grown too arrogant. Officer, should we fail to neutralize them now, there won't be a later for us. If you question my orders again, I will launch you out of the silos. That should save on some mines, no? The officer in question paled before replying with a shaky salute. Admiral Harvey once again turned to the battle projection, trying to figure out the course of the action that he should take. Men! We will take the defensive stance while we try and determine what these enemy vessels are capable of. Remember what we are fighting for, and that will happen to us if we lose here. A mighty yes, sir, echoed resoundingly across the ship, which helped to ease the Admiral somewhat. He noticed that even the soldiers that were hesitant to carry out their duty were fully immersed in their tasks, and that the fleet coordinators were positioning the smaller vessels around the larger ones in a cocoon-like shape. Another officer approached him with a projection in hand, which displayed the fleet's formation. Due to the defensive status, most of the fighters were clustered around the Aether relay ships and the larger vessels, which were launching more and more fighters every second. He noticed that groups of fighters would approach singular human ships and concentrate their fire, but the human vessels were seemingly unfazed. Even in the tsunami of mines that his fleet launched seemed to have little effect. Those that were damaged by the endless barrage seemingly repaired themselves seconds later, much to the Admiral's growing horror. We'll need a different course of action. The Admiral approached the officer Nodre, who was the most senior amongst the fleet coordination officers. Officer, I want you to order 80% of the available fighter pilots to stop their assault on the smaller ships and to concentrate their fire on the larger ones. Our capital ships will use distraction that they provide us to also attack the larger ships. Leave 10% of the fighters to distract the enemy's smaller vessels, and in the meanwhile, leave another 10% to protect our capital ships. But sir, given their vessels' seemingly regenerative abilities, won't the fighter pilots be wasting resources? We'll be wasting their lives for nothing, plus our most important ships will be vitally under-defended. Officer, it's clear to see that the enemy has outclassed us when it comes to individual combat abilities. That means that our only advantage we currently have is numbers, and who knows how long that'll last. It is certain that even more of their vessels are heading towards us as we speak. That leaves us with only 2 courses of viable action. The first is to throw everything we have into destroying their fleet's capital ship, regardless of the amount of lives it'll cost. The second is to retreat. Which would you prefer? The officer Nodre visibly paled, gulping at the perspective that he was presented with. I'd prefer likely death of a certain one, sir. The Admiral nodded towards him, grim determination clearly displayed on his face. It is better to die in glory than to live like a coward. Yeah, right. Who genuinely wants to die on some distant battlefield? Men, I want you to charge up your energy lancers before their safe limit. We are currently suffering a horrendous amount of attrition, so I want the maximum possible amount of aether to be pumped into them. Ignore the safety limits. He approached the weapons officers, who had already displayed how long it would take before the lancers would be fired. 30 seconds. I wonder how many lives it'll cost to buy us that time. Men, I want constant updates. How many fighters do we have left? Sir, 10% of the fighters have already perished. 25 seconds, Nest. Sir, the enemy is racking up kills as we speak. 20% of the fighters have perished. 20 seconds left. He turned towards the display screens and took the sight of the carnage. Human projectiles were ripping through his fighters like a hot knife through butter, each impact snuffing out a fairy life. 15 seconds. He saw fighters turning and weaving desperately in order to avoid incoming human projectiles. All of it seemingly in vain as the projectiles proceeded to change directions and follow them. 10 seconds left. Sir, 50% of the fighters have perished. What should we do? Officer Nordre called out, seemingly on the verge of crying. One look from the Admiral silenced him, however, and he returned to his duty. 5 seconds left. As he counted down, he noticed a swarm of fighters accosting a large human ship getting smaller and smaller. Now's not the time to dismay, he muttered to himself. At the very least, less fighters present would mean that there would be less fairy deaths caused by their own weapons. Because these poor fighters won't have time to move out the way. May your souls rest in peace. 3, 2, 1, fire! White-hot bolts of energy streaked out of the fairy capital ships, an extremely concentrated aether vaporizing anything it came into contact with, including the fairy fighters that couldn't move out of the way. At the very least, the larger human ship should be crippled by this blow. From there on, it'll be easier to deal with the smaller ones. The energy lance raced across the 1,000 kilometers of void between the adversaries in mere seconds, with a light that they emitted almost blinding anyone who looked at them directly. The bridge fell silent, with every officer available taking the strangely beautiful sight. Such was its beauty that no one questioned why it was slowing down when it approached the human ships. Not for a few seconds, at least. Wait, what? For the first time in a long, long time, the Admiral, along with every single fairy present, was lost for words. The unstoppable energy lance, the weapon that always worked, the weapon that had sundered countless foes, the weapon which left their enemies begging for mercy, was still. Somehow, it stopped. Everyone was so enamored with the strangely beautiful sight that nobody noticed the arrival of a new human ship, which was positioned in a hexagonal prism around the fleet. Consequently, nobody noticed the pulses of energy that they were transmitting to each other, and, as a result, nobody noticed the translucent walls that now surrounded the fleet. Well, nobody besides the Admiral, who was now considering the best course of action. We've lost. That much is undeniable. The question now is how to inform the Empire about what we've seen here today. Officer Nordre turned towards him, his confusion adorning his face. Sir, our aether supply is somehow being cut off. Regardless, it is dwindling rapidly. What do we do? So, they've trapped us, Men, your attention, please. Everyone present on the bridge turned to face him, evidently having overcome their previous stupor. Now, instead of smugness at the start of the battle, or even wonder of a few seconds ago, each of them now looked either shocked, dismayed, or utterly dismayed. The Admiral cleared his throat before continuing. As Imperial soldiers, we have a duty to fulfill. We failed to carry out the Empress's wishes, therefore we must die. Now the choice before you is simple. We can die like cattle waiting to be slaughtered, or you can die like the proud warriors you are. Though our aether is being cut off, the precious minutes we have left can be used to slaughter as many of those human savages as possible. What say you? The bridge was silent for a few seconds, with time apparently having stood still. That was until the resounding roar echoed across the ship, the hope and desperation of everyone present clear to hear. The Admiral took the data storage crystal from the data processing section, and once again he turned to face the bridge. Crap, what do I do? I don't want to die here. General Hurst was right. I shouldn't have come here. As your Admiral, the stain of defeat is mine to bear. The data crystal that I have in my hand will be used to make sure that these humans' tactics are known, so that we may crush them in due time. I will take this to our home, and though I may be executed for my defeat, I'll make sure that each and every one of you are remembered for your valiant sacrifice. Remember what you are fighting for. Yes, sir! The soldiers present yelled. The Admiral turned and sprinted towards the ship's hangar, long since abandoning any pretense of dignity. One thing is clear, now that I've fought the humans, the Empire is destined to lose, and I don't intend to be there once it happens. I'll deliver the data to the nearest outpost, and once I do, I'll flee to somewhere far, far away. The evacuation shuttle was still present and functioning, which was a welcome respite to the string of disasters that had just occurred. He hopped in and initiated the startup procedure, which was thankfully powered by its own independent supply of aether. He lifted off and zoomed out of the hangar. He turned back to take the sight of the ship, which was now closer to the smoking wreck than a beautiful capital ship. Even though it was barely functioning, the readings from the ship showed that the remaining aether present was primed for detonation. They're planning to blow themselves up. Don't they realize that won't work? The humans might just freeze the detonation, just like they did with the Lance energy. A grim realization overcome him. These are fairies prepared to die, right here and now. They probably aren't thinking this through. Either way, I need to get away from you as quickly as possible, he muttered to himself, grimacing all the while. He quickly approached the translucent wall projected by the humans, praying all the while that he'd be able to pass through. Those asteroids seem to pass through just fine, so hopefully I will as well. He increased his velocity as he came closer to it, until he was at full speed and merely meters away from the wall. For the first time in a long time, the Admiral was screaming without abandon, having long since abandoned his decorum and grace. He was still screaming as he hurled himself headfirst into the wall. End of chapter. Just a quick shout out to the T5 peeps: Bob the Dragon, Cat Crab Lobster, Data Magnet, Dark Machine, Bezic, Try Again 95, Fudic Yol, Astrea the Dreamer, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Ithilia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Bucksmorm. Thank you very much. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.